The explosion of glass shattered the stillness of Maplewood Lane, a quiet suburban street where the air usually carried nothing more threatening than the scent of blooming jasmine and charcoal grills. Henry Walsh, 78, sat bolt upright in his weathered oak rocking chair on the front porch, his chipped mug of black coffee spilling across his flannel shirt. His eyes, clouded by years but sharp as a hawk's, locked onto the black SUV that had just careened into his neighbor's mailbox, its tinted windows glinting like the eyes of a predator. Two men in tactical vests spilled out, their boots pounding the asphalt with deliberate menace. They weren't cops. They weren't even from the neighborhood. But the bold white letters on their vests screamed community standards enforcement, and the way they scanned the street told Henry they were here for trouble. His trouble. Maplewood was the kind of place where kids rode bikes until dusk, and old men like Henry were left to their memories, dismissed as relics of a bygone era. But tonight, under a sky bruised purple by the setting sun, something primal stirred in Henry's chest. His fingers tightened around the armrest, the same hands that once dismantled a Soviet operative in a Berlin back alley without breaking a sweat. The men approached his porch, one tall and wiry, the other built like a linebacker with a buzz cut that screamed ex-military gone rogue. They didn't know who they were dealing with. Not yet. Henry Walsh, the tall one, barked, holding a clipboard like it was a warrant. His voice carried the artificial authority of someone who'd rehearsed it in a mirror. You're in violation of community standards. Untrimmed hedges, unauthorized yard decor that rusted anchor by your steps. Sign this, or we seize the property. Henry didn't blink. He tilted his head, studying them like a wolf sizing up prey. Community standards? His voice was low, gravelly, the kind that made you lean in to catch every word. Since when does Maplewood send goons in tactical gear to measure my grass? The linebacker snorted, stepping closer, his boots scuffing the porch steps. Old man, you don't get it. This ain't a request. Sign, or we escalate. He leaned in, close enough for Henry to smell the cheap cologne, and whispered something that turned Henry's blood to ice. Delta 9, ring a bell. The name hit like a gunshot. Delta 9, a designation buried in the ashes of a life Henry had been ordered to forget. A life of black ops, covert extractions, and missions so classified they didn't exist on paper. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with clarity. These weren't petty scammers. They knew who he was or who he'd been, and that meant someone, somewhere, had dug up his past and sent these men to bury it again. Henry stood, slow and deliberate, his 6-foot frame unfolding with a grace that defied his age. The rocking chair creaked to a stop. You boys ever serve? He asked, his tone deceptively calm. The tall one smirked. We serve notices. He tapped his vest, where a cheap plastic badge gleamed. That's all you need to know, Pops. Henry's smile was a blade. Wrong answer. What happened next was over in seconds, but felt like a lifetime. The linebacker reached for Henry's arm, a casual grab meant to intimidate. Henry moved like lightning, twisting the man's wrist in a fluid arc, snapping it with a sickening crack. The clipboard guy lunged, fumbling for a taser. Henry sidestepped, grabbed the man's elbow, and redirected his momentum, sending him face first into the porch railing. The wood splintered, the man crumpled. The linebacker, clutching his broken wrist, tried to swing with his good hand. Henry caught it midair, spun him, and slammed his head into the post with a thud that echoed down the street. Silence followed, broken only by the distant hum of a lawnmower and the faint chirp of crickets. Henry stood over the two groaning bodies, his breath steady, his eyes cold. That's for grabbing me, he said softly. Then, quieter almost to himself, and for thinking you could scare my family. The Walsh house was a modest 2-story with peeling white paint and a front yard that hadn't seen a landscaper in years. Inside, it was alive with routine. Sarah, Henry's daughter, was in the kitchen, kneading dough for her famous cinnamon rolls. Her son, Tommy, 8 years old and all elbows, was sprawled on the driveway, sketching a lopsided spaceship in neon chalk. Henry's grandson had always seen him as just Grandpa Slow, quiet, the guy who burned toast and forgot where he parked his truck. But Sarah knew better. She'd grown up catching glimpses of the man beneath the surface. The way he'd freeze at certain sounds, the scars on his knuckles he never explained, the way he'd sometimes stare at the horizon like he was waiting for a war to catch up. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Sarah stepped onto the porch, wiping flour from her hands. She froze at the sight of the two men sprawled at Henry's feet. "Dad, what the hell?" "Call the sheriff," Henry said, his voice calm but firm. "Tell him Henry Walsh just had uninvited guests." Tommy peeked from behind the screen door, eyes wide. "Grandpa, did you fight bad guys?" Henry glanced at him, the ghost of a smile softening his face. "Just a couple of bullies, kid. Go help your mom." Sarah dialed 911, her hands shaking. The dispatcher's voice crackled through. "Units are en route. Stay on the line." Outside, neighbors began to emerge, drawn by the commotion. Phones were out, recording the footage already destined for the internet. Henry crouched beside the tall man, patting down his vest with practiced efficiency. He pulled out a small radio civilian grade, no law enforcement frequency in a laminated card with community standards agent printed in a font that screamed forgery. "Gas station quality," Henry muttered, tossing it aside. Sheriff Dan Carver arrived minutes later, his cruiser's lights painting the street red and blue. A burly man with a gray mustache and a no-nonsense stare. He took one look at the scene and whistled. "Henry, you want to tell me why I've got two wannabe cops bleeding on your porch?" "They weren't cops," Henry said, standing. "They weren't even HOA. Check their gear. It's fake." Carver's deputies frisked the men, confirming Henry's suspicions. No IDs, no badges, just unregistered radios and a QR code card that led to a dead website. The linebacker groaned, spitting blood. "You're dead, old man. You have no idea who you're messing with." Henry's eyes narrowed. "Funny. I was about to say the same." By midnight, the story was spiraling. The neighbors' videos hit social media. The hashtag Grandpa Takedown trending by 2 a.m. The 28-second clip of Henry's takedown clean, precise, terrifying racked up millions of views. Commenters dissected his moves. "That's Krav Maga." "No, CIA close quarters. Dude's a ghost from Delta Force." A retired Marine posted, "I saw that wrist lock in Fallujah, 89. That's not training, that's instinct." Henry ignored it all. He sat on the back porch with Sarah, a fresh coffee in hand, the night air thick with the scent of pine. Tommy slept inside, clutching a crayon drawing of Super Grandpa, wielding a lightning bolt. Sarah broke the silence. "Dad, they called you Delta 9. What does that mean?" Henry pulled a worn dog tag from his pocket. No name, just a serial number and a date. Sealed June 15th, 90. "It means I used to be someone else," he said. "Someone they thought they could erase." He didn't tell the story in one go. It came in fragments, like shrapnel working its way out. Task Group Delta was a shadow unit, formed in the 80s for missions too dirty for official records. Henry had been a ranger, handpicked for his ability to blend in, to become invisible. They didn't want heroes, he said. They wanted ghosts. People who could walk into a room, do the job, and vanish. He spoke of jungles where the air burned your lungs, of a snowy alley in Prague where he'd left a man bleeding out, of a name he still whispered in his sleep. After his last mission, they burned his file, gave him a new identity, and a cover story of selective memory loss. "I was supposed to fade," he said. "But fading's hard when you've got a family." Sarah's eyes glistened. "Why didn't you tell us?" He looked at her, his voice soft but heavy. "Because some truths are heavier than the people you love should have to carry." The next morning, a courier arrived, no badge, no name, just a sealed envelope. Inside was a single sheet, directive expired. Contact authorized. Attached was a burner phone. Henry made one call, his voice steady. "Delta 9. I remember everything. I want answers." The call lasted 30 seconds. He didn't share what was said, but his jaw tightened, and he slipped the phone into his pocket. Sheriff Carver returned that afternoon, his face grim. The men's gear traced back to a black-budget contractor, Pentagon surplus, no end-user records. But they found something else, a folded paper in the linebacker's boot with 3 names. Henry's was first. The second was Ellen Crane, a retired NSA cryptanalyst living 4 blocks away. The third was Marcus Reed, an 85-year-old former DIA translator. All elderly, all alone, all with past someone wanted buried. They're cleaning house, Henry said, his voice like steel, targeting people like me, people who know things they were told to forget. Carver paled. What kind of things? Henry didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed his old bomber jacket, the one with a faded dagger patch on the shoulder, and headed for the garage. He opened a dusty crate, revealing a disassembled M14 rifle and a folder marked classified. I'm finding Ellen and Marcus, he said. Before they do, Henry's search began quietly. He made calls, using coded phrases only a handful of ghosts would recognize. Delta to dusk, confirm shadow, still stands. One by one, voices answered old teammates, scattered across the country, all targeted by similar enforcement scams. Ellen Crane was safe, tipped off by Henry's call. Marcus Reed wasn't. His house was empty, his car abandoned, a single note on his table, do not resist. You'll be relocated. The story exploded. CNN ran the footage on loop, pundits calling Henry the retiree who remembered justice. Reddit threads spun theories. MKUltra, Blackwater, a rogue CIA splinter. A viral mural appeared in a Texas suburb. Henry in a trench coat, an eagle overhead, caption never forgotten. A petition for a federal investigation hit 500,000 signatures. Henry didn't care. He was too busy. He visited the Veterans Center, mentoring a young Marine fresh from Kabul. He helped Tommy build a Lego garden, a tribute to the rose bush he'd planted where the fake cop's clipboard shattered. And sometimes he vanished for hours, returning with mud on his boots and a look in his eyes that said he'd been somewhere the world didn't need to know. One night, a week later, a shadowed figure lingered outside the house, caught on camera for 18 seconds before vanishing. Henry reviewed the tape, then loaded the M14. They're testing me, he said, seeing if I'll break. Are you scared? Sarah asked. He smiled, faint but fierce. No, I'm ready. 3 weeks later, a man in a black suit arrived with Sheriff Carver, carrying a briefcase. He handed Henry a folder. Names, dates, a dismantled operation targeting retired operatives. You stopped it, the man said. They thought you'd fold. You didn't. Henry closed the folder. I'm still here. That's enough. The community gathered that spring, planting a garden in Henry's yard, white roses, low shrubs, a steel plaque. For Henry Walsh, Delta 9. He remembered. Neighbors laid stones, each a silent nod to the forgotten. Tommy added a chalk drawing. My grandpa never forgets. Henry stood at the edge, hat over his heart, tears in his eyes. Later, Tommy climbed into his lap, notebook in hand. Grandpa, who was Delta 1? Henry's voice softened. A friend. A ghost. Some are still out there. Were they like you? Some were better. All were forgotten. Tommy hugged him. You're not forgotten. Henry smiled, pressing an old challenge coin into Tommy's hand. Keep this. It's for doing what's right, even when no one's watching. The cameras moved on. The hashtags faded, but Henry didn't. He still drank his coffee, still watered his roses, still watched the horizon. Because somewhere, someone was watching back. And Henry Walsh Delta 9, Grandpa, hero was ready. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this VY Deo with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next VY Deo.